So as we sit here, October 2022, we've got some time now where we've had the ban the box, or really ban the ability for us to ask a salary question in many states as we go through our executive search process. And we've got enough history, enough data to draw some conclusions as to whether or not that was a good idea or a bad idea, right? And I think, as with anything else that comes from, a law from the government that's there to support, in this case, workers, you have intended and ultimately unintended consequences, and we're now seeing both sides of those, right? So, where we work is kind of director through C-suite in marketing, product, communications, digital, e-commerce, and it's very different at that mid-level director, kind of new VP versus EVP, SVP, CMO level talent, right? So if you start kind of early career, which is not a place that we do a lot of work, really that we do any work, it seems like that's a really positive rule, right? A really positive development for candidates at that level, right? It gives them the opportunity to engage in a search process and not have to share where they are. And that's really where you could see that organization to organization, job to job, there's going to be a big difference across compensation bands, right? So I think for helping those individuals, it's been a really positive development. You skip all the way to the top of the food chain and you're looking at, chief marketing officer, chief digital officer, chief communications officer, EVP, SVP, wherever you are in that realm, right? It's really not having an impact at all. At that level, those individuals are more than capable of advocating for themselves, have had enough experience both in negotiating compensation for themselves, for employees, led teams. They understand what their worth is and what their value is in the marketplace. And literally, I see no impact at that level for the change in the law, which is about half the states we can ask, what's your salary history? And about half the states we cannot, right? Where I think we're starting to see some unintended consequences is kind of in that mid-career director, new VP type level person, right? And so we're seeing pretty frequently where candidates at that level are overshooting what they should be relative to what would be a win for compensation, right? And we've had it happen here recently, so I'll give you an example, but it's not an isolated incident, right? So we have a client that has been a client for a long time, very good client, and we've done some C-suite work for them, and now we've got a director level role. And the candidate that we were interviewing, he was a really good fit, and he's in a state where we can't ask the question, and so we kind of asked him what his expectations are, and the answer we got was he's looking for somewhere around 250, a little bit more than that, but he certainly wasn't going to consider anything under 250. And you could look back at his experience and see that that was probably not near where he was today, and that he was his expectations were over market value for his experience and background. So we tried to coach him through that process and give him an education on, hey, we think this is a little bit high from where you are, what you're asking for relative to market. And at that point in time, he chose to hold firm and say, this is what I'm looking for. So we didn't really present him to our client because he's well out of their compensation range. We just shared his information on a report that says, here's someone we've spoken to, we've screened, we think's a really good fit for the role, and here's why we're not presenting him based on his salary expectations. And so the search evolves, we come back, and the client asks, is that someone that we can talk to? Are those really his salary expectations, or do you think he'd be willing to be negotiable? So at that point in time, we go back, he lowers expectations a little bit. As the search is evolving, because his skills and experience were such a good fit for the client, we end up having 4 conversations with him around his expectations and seeing if we can get him to come to a reasonable number. And basically at the end of the day, we just had to say to him, look, this is something they're interested in doing as far as interviewing you, and the salary range is not going to, we're not going to be able to get them over 205, maybe 210 for an offer if we get to that point. And ultimately he came around and said, yeah, that'd be great. That's quite a big bump, from where he is today. So getting to 205, 210 is a step forward from where he is today, but he's asking for 250. And that's an extreme example, but we're seeing it happen pretty frequently where candidates are thinking that because there is no, we can't ask your history, that no one knows what you're making, right? We've been doing this for 26 years. I've been doing this for 25 years. And there is so we have lots of experience. There's also lots of data out there on what organizations pay and what are right compensation levels for roles. And even though we can't ask you the question, we can typically figure out where you are. And pretty much going into that when we knew he was asking for something that was way above what was market rate for his experience and background, right? And at the end of the day, that's where we want to end up, right? We want to end up with a candidate who starts a role where they're really excited about the new opportunity and they feel like they're fairly compensated for their skills, background, and experience. And we want the client to start knowing they got top talent and that they're going to get a great return on their investment. And that balance is really important because we want the candidate to start in a positive place, and we want the client to start believing in the candidate, but not feeling like they've stretched themselves to the point where expectations on that candidate now need to change and be unrealistic, right? So as we went back and forth 4 times with this candidate, he finally came to the point where he said, hey, you know what? I'm open to this role at the level that they can afford to pay. And by that point in time, the client wasn't so excited about having a conversation with him because he wasn't really realistic with his salary expectations to begin with. And so at the end of the day, they chose not to interview him. And it's a shame because it was a great fit and a great role for him. So, when you're talking about the top positions, it doesn't seem to happen. I think it's a good rule, a good law, and advantageous for people at the junior level, and it's in that mid-level where we're seeing it create some confusion, and largely where candidates are trying to make too big of a jump in one move.